It. I'm reading his his post right now, and it says, I quote, "I'd highly advise against getting any dog shit Lenovo laptops." And that'd be a great time to plug that this podcast is filmed on a dog shit Lenovo laptop.
Sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
more alarming, some media outlets publish these things simply are true without checking facts first.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
David, December 1773, and we are back from our long week. Like I said last episode, it's always a long week in between them. But if you're watching and you would like to watch our videos each and every long week, I think we got this down now. I think if I point over here, it's right. It'll flip. It's bottom right. Bottom right. Hit the subscribe. Join our page. Watch our videos. Share the content. And just enjoy. And with me, as always, for these awesome videos that we do and the content that we put out, it is good to have Ryan back with us here. Ryan, how are you doing?
Good, my friend. How are you?
Good as always. Ready to jump into it. It was a crazy busy week,
To say the least. It was one thing that not only was there 2 weeks in a row that there was national conventions for the two major parties in our political class, but on top of it, when you factor in all of the other spaghetti that was thrown into the media spotlight this week, most importantly are the shooting in, how do you say it? I had it written down.
Kenosha?
Kenosha, Wisconsin, involving Jacob Blake. He was the man. I'm sure everybody has seen the video. He was walking to his car, and there was police with firearms drawn on him. He went from the passenger side all the way around to the driver's side. He looked like he was reaching into the floorboard of his car, and he was shot several times in the back, leaving him paralyzed. He was put in the hospital. And as far as we know right now, he's paralyzed. His GoFundMe page has reached over $1 million, and he has got a lawyer. And they're going after the cops. And it seems that what was really the first one, right? It was Baltimore under the Obama administration.
Was it the Michael Brown hands up, don't shoot?
Yes,
obviously, that wasn't the first. Whatever, but that's kind of what started this.
It really started with
single.
Trayvon, right? Like Trayvon was really the start, the foundation for the Black Lives Matter movement. But it was really that Baltimore shooting that prompted these protests turn into riots. It has been a trend ever since then.
Yeah,
and it seemed, for the most part, honestly, for most of Trump's presidency, there wasn't any of this. There was none of these outrageous riots. We're approaching, if I'm not mistaken, it's closer to 3 months now. We're almost at the 3-month mark that some of these protests have been happening since George Floyd, which is a whole nother, not to jump around quickly here, but the George Floyd thing was they released the autopsy of him, and he died from a drug overdose. There was a second angle released from the police footage, not just the cell phone camera, but it was the second angle. And it showed the entire time that George Floyd spoke about not being able to breathe. In his system, he had a large dose of fentanyl, and the medical examiner said that if there was no police interaction, we would have found George Floyd dead within the day, in his car or in his house. They would have found him overdosed on drugs. And obviously, everything with the police expedited that process. But yeah, it seems this was a thing that happened under Obama, and it just seems to have solidified. And I want to prefix everything that Dave and we have our points of view. We don't always agree ourselves, but for the most part, we try to present as clear facts as we have previed information to. We're all reading the same things, all seeing the same things everybody else is. We're not here to pick sides. We're here to tell what we see and analyze what we have seen. And I still, to this day, with any of these riots or any of these police brutality shootings, or anything that can be labeled any kind of police brutality, I have faith in the court system that we have in this country. And I think everybody is entitled to their day in court. We do not need mob justice. We do not need mob rule. This includes the officers. This includes this young man in Wisconsin as well. Let the courts handle it. Because obviously these protests aren't just protests anymore. Once again, this has only been a thing that has happened in since the pandemic. During the time of the pandemic, there was no riots and burning before. There was some resistance against Trump when he was first elected with some of the Antifa things. But as far as burning and looting, this is a very new thing. We're only talking the last 3-4 months here. And I have faith in our courts. Let's utilize them. The problem now is it seems that I don't know if it's just media or politicians, a mixture of both, or just the social consciousness that we see on social media and other forms of that it's bled into the fabric of America now that nobody can be objective. It's very hard for people to be objective. Obviously, I don't want to see anybody shot, especially by the police. The guys that are supposed to keep you safe. But at some point, there's personal responsibility on the defendant, and there's personal responsibility on the police officers. And we're not seeing it portrayed that way. We are seeing very clear-cut narratives on both sides of the aisle, and it's hard to really make sense of any of it. And it just seems that everything is put in the washer machine for a spin cycle.
Yeah. So the thing for me with police brutality, and I always like to take it case by case. You can't just, like you say, just broad brush everything all the time. I like to go case by case, individual. I like to look at individuals and things like that. But the thing that you were talking about, where I'd like to see everybody have their day in court, there's a really fine line, unfortunately, where the officer also has a reasonable right to protect himself. And in a high tension situation like with Jacob Blake, of course you don't want to see a guy get shot in the back 7 times, but he was firmly resisting arrest. And again, that doesn't automatically mean he should be killed or shot or whatever the case may be. But he fought off 2 tasers. If I remember correctly, he was tasered twice, and he continued to resist after he was tasered multiple times. Again, and then he after all this is reaching into his car where they suspected or were highly suspicious that he had a weapon in the car, which we now know is true. Whether he was reaching for it or not, I can't say that. But it just gets to a point where at some point the officer, unfortunately, gets kind of pushed up against a wall where what is he supposed to do in that case?
Yeah, we're seeing when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. That's what all of these things have come down to. And once again, we're just trying to get what is real. And it was cycled in the media for multiple days that he was there Jacob Blake was there trying to break up a fight. That's a lie. That was not what was happened. If you listen to the police recording, which has been released by the Wisconsin police, and you can go online and listen to it, it says that a woman called the cops because he stole his car keys, refused to give them back, and he was causing trouble. Now, I'm sure if that woman, if you were to ask her again, after everything that happened, she probably wouldn't have called the cops. Or whatever. It would be a different situation. Hindsight is 20/20. And that's what we're all looking at these cases in. Every time one of these men die or there's a police interaction that leads to death, we always look at it in this 20/20 hindsight vision. Well, the cop should have done this, or he should have done that, or he's a criminal and should be listening. And yeah, it's all right and it's all wrong, because obviously somebody is paralyzed,
Mhm.
maybe for the rest of his life, and it's tore apart a whole community. And at this point, it's getting more involved with the young man. I had his name. The young man with the AR-15 that was involved.
I
That's
believe it's Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse. Now we're involving other parties, and this is we're approaching the straw that breaks camel's backs here.
Mhm.
I honestly, I can't believe that it took this long for a shooting of somebody in self-defense. As far as the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff to break media attention. But yeah, back to Jacob Blake before I get ahead of myself. Yeah, the media narrative that was crafted was lies. They propped it up. Politicians were on Twitter, all of them,
Mhm.
DNC officials and everything on there, propping up stuff that was not verified. Now, I'm not saying they're saying it to lie directly, but let's wait. Why do we rush to conclusions?
Yeah.
It seems that mob justice has impregnated everything. And I spoke a few podcasts ago that it was the mob justice that has been moving the political needle. And this is another example of that.
Mhm.
Social and mob justice is moving the needle when it comes to the rule of law. This is dangerous. We're flirting with losing a very important part of what made this country great, which was it didn't matter if you were a lower citizen or a president, you're all held to the same rule of law. The same standard applies to everybody. And it seems that that's being interpreted now in a different light, and
Yeah.
it's not good. It's really
No.
not good.
No, and I think I have a major issue. And it's one thing, again, like you said, why not wait for the facts to come out? But I have a major issue when the facts do come out and we have the media and people pushing a false narrative that they know without a doubt is false 100%, and they're pushing it and pushing it, pushing it, and they go unchecked because they don't have anybody on their CNN doesn't have somebody from the other side, or MSNBC doesn't have somebody from the other side. They always have these lackeys come in. It's just a false narrative, and it's the media is 100% responsible for this mob mentality that's going on right now, because they're out there pushing these known false narratives, and it's causing riots. They are responsible for riots.
Mostly peaceful riots.
Mostly peaceful riots. That's correct.
Yeah, and they'll never be held to account. It's not like because we're
No.
fighting amongst each other. I mean, we're talking. This is borderline busting out into a full scale race war. Now, you could argue that this country's been at a race war, depending on what side of the aisle you are, for a very long time, and that may be true. But we're actually seeing, when I see things like this, that these very clear cut distinctions get made without facts being 100% vetted or brought to the surface, you're going to increase racism. People that were already racist are going to be twice as racist, and then the black community in particular feels they're being hunted and targeted, and all this other things, that these narratives that have been broad brushed on this movement of Black Lives Matter, that they're basically all fearful for their life every second of every day. Now they are, they're more resentment to maybe look at white people differently or open-mindedness, and it seems like we are losing the prospects of being objective and taking everything at an individual case-by-case basis. We have lost the art of analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gone. Like I said, that it's one thing to rush to judgment a little bit, and then if you're wrong and you know you're wrong, you make a correction, and I'll always gladly do that. If I say something that ends up being wrong in the future, I'll gladly say that I was wrong. But the media, like I said, they just go out there and they know something is wrong and they push it anyway because it's what they want. It's them creating the narrative based on falsehoods, and I think that's it's a really unprofessional. It's a really irresponsible way to run the media.
And it's sad, even people like us, third-party media, we piggyback on them. You know what I mean?
That's where we get our news from.
Yeah, and then we either have to sift through multiple news sources or wait for the official investigation or the official document to disprove or prove what they're saying is real. There's so much legwork in just getting non-objective truth.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, objective truth. I mean, there is no my truth. There is no emotional truth. It's like what was real and what's not.
Mhm.
I don't know why this is a hard thing. And once again, these protests, we can call them protests, but by and large, every time one of these protests happens, they're good for a few hours, and then when the sun starts setting, all of the crap starts. So yes, it's going to paint your entire movement in that city in a bad light, because obviously you people have not policed this. You've either not self-policed it, or the people that were self-policing it are no longer involved in that, and it's being hijacked. Either way, if you're out there putting curfews in place to keep people safe, because this is a continually violent trend the last 3-4 months we're seeing. It has not gone down. Portland, Oregon is still going. They're still going.
Mhm.
And that's where they set up Chop and Chaz.
Yeah, that's still going. I haven't even heard about it for a while. I figured it just died off.
No, the mayor today, I saw a quick headline. I did not have, he was giving a live press conference when I was doing a little bit of research today. And yeah, he was basically telling the federal government, we don't want your help.
Perfect.
But when there's over $1 billion, it's like $1 billion worth of property damage has happened amongst all of these protests and riots.
Yeah, I don't want to. Don't dare, when this is all over, come to the federal government looking for a handout. You didn't want to do anything about it. You're not getting a dime.
Why are you coming to me? Why would you even come to the state government? You know what I mean? Like, Black Lives Matter, I'm sure, is a pretty well-funded organization. Maybe you should look into that. Maybe we should look into taking funding from some of these organizations that are parts of these movement, like Antifa. Antifa isn't just like they're getting money somewhere. So yeah, it just seems that it just will this trend continue till election day and then on to inauguration if Trump wins, which I'm seeing multiple things that Trump's winning in a landslide, or we spoke on our podcast about how Trump would lose electorally, or I'm sorry, lose popularly but win electorally. Will we get a repeat of 16? We're going to touch on the RNC in a little bit, but the things that came out of that, I don't know if there's ever been a more politically divided time in this country.
No.
I'm not one of my areas of American history is not the Civil War by any stretch of the imagination, but I really wonder what it was like. And considering we get things so instant, it takes seconds to get information now. I wonder if that is hyper.
Oh, for sure.
It's putting it all on hyper speed,
For
and
sure.
because it takes 3-4 weeks maybe to get all of the facts for them to do their investigation, for them to release an official memo on any of these shootings. And then by then it's already been cycled through social media, the mob in the media, and then our paid media that we get on cable news, spit out into the public, regurgitated, and then it's spun. It's passed around all of us local common man, and it's not the truth. And if it is the truth, some of it's wrong. Like, this is not a healthy way to run a constitutional republic.
No.
And we're busting at the seams. It's sad to see.
Yeah, you brought up if Trump were to reelected, and talking about the division of this country. When we went to the inauguration in 2016 or 2017 when the official inauguration was, I don't know if I'd go to it again. To be perfectly honest, I think there would be some shit going down if Trump wins again. His inauguration is going to be a dangerous place to be. And now we know from current events, God forbid you were to want to go there and try to defend yourself, you're going to be smeared.
Yeah, do you want to touch on to into Mr. Kyle Rittenhouse's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna preface this one as well. I've said before on this podcast that what got me more politically active more than anything was firearms. I was always told, no matter what rally I went to or whenever I was out in public protesting openly, be on your best behavior. You don't want to give politicians or media any reason, or your common man that you're trying to have this discussion with, maybe change hearts and minds. You don't want to give them any reason to be alienated. And we can get into the minutia of him actually being there with his firearm and everything else. But I will say this does not make gun groups look good at all. It does not make them look good at all. This is a poster child example of a lot of their talking points that they've run in the gun control community.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing... I don't know. You said you want to wait to get into the minutia. I think we should start with the minutia. And again, just like we were just talking about, all the facts of this case obviously are not out. So we're working on things we currently know. And those things can change, and maybe that could entirely change the whole situation. But I haven't even heard one single statement or fact of why he was there to begin with. And I've heard multiple, I don't know if you want to call them guesses, but for the most part, I haven't heard any concrete evidence of why he was there to begin with. And I think that when this goes to court, I think the intent and why he was there is going to be the key piece of this case.
It is going to be found out that he was there to cause trouble. That's what it's gonna. He was charged today with homicide.
Yeah, I think multiple counts, among other things.
First-degree homicide, and if he is charged with that, he could serve the rest of his life in prison. Mm-hmm. They're saying it's premeditated. Was one of the charges.
And again, that's where the intent comes in. Why was he there, and why was he armed?
Yes. Now, and there are different arguments because there's two going on. There's mainly two going on right now, and it's like, was his shooting what he did self-defense? Okay, so that's one argument. The other argument, which is going to be what the courts will go after, is why was he there in the first place?
Yeah, that's going to be the key of the case, in my opinion.
And that is why I believe he will lose this case.
Yeah, and let me preface everything I'm saying. Let me preface what I'm saying with, I do believe he was acting in self-defense. But with that said, again, when it comes to the case, that's not really what's going to matter as much as you think. I think at the end of the day, he put himself, he again, with what we know, he likely put himself in a tough spot.
Willingly. I had somebody I know told me that he was hired to protect a business.
Yeah, I saw that at a car dealership or something. That's one of the things I saw.
Now, if that's true, okay, maybe. But any report that I've read has not said that. Now, I'm not going to take what some Facebook Live video says either. That's not investigated. That's not an investigation by police, by ballistics, by a crime lab, by getting eyewitness reports, comparing timestamps, a host of various other means and things that detective
phone records
do.
And all that stuff. Yeah. That's all going to come into play.
How long was he there? When did he leave his hometown? When this? Because he actually, after all the shooting, he went home. They arrested him in his hometown. They didn't arrest him in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
He was arrested in his hometown?
From my understanding, yes.
Oh, I didn't see that.
He was arrested by Illinois police.
I didn't see that. Yeah, yes. And one of the things too, again, this talks about, kind of misleading and things like that. The talk about crossing state lines, and he did cross state lines, but the way they made it sound is like he traveled so far out of his way to get where he was, when in reality he was, 20, 30 minutes from where he got. It just happens to be he lived close to the border. And again, that doesn't matter in a legal, legally it doesn't matter because, again, regardless, you're crossing state lines with a firearm, and that's a felony, especially
big no-no.
Yeah, especially at his age, where he wasn't allowed to own the firearm that he had. So he's going to do time regardless. If he gets off on all his homicide charges, he's still going to do time in prison.
And he'll be a felon.
Correct.
He lost his right to bear arms and vote for the rest of his life. Maybe not the rest of his life, but for a good portion. This was not smart. This was not smart. And anybody defending him, honestly, like, once again, the whole self-defense thing is literally a different discussion. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about a 17-year-old man armed with a semi-automatic rifle knowingly went over state lines to defend somewhere because he had either he was paid or he thought it was his duty, and he ended up killing 2 people, maybe 3 people.
Yeah, he injured a third who I don't know what their condition is, but
well, they're also saying that before that video came out, he shot somebody else, and that's why those people were going after him to begin with, was to stop him because he already committed a murder. Now, once again, these are just Facebook Live videos. I don't trust any of that. That's not an internal investigation. That's not a DOJ investigation. That's not a police investigation. I'm sure the FBI will get involved in this.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
ATF will get involved in this. When those feds get involved in this and the partisan gloves are removed, they'll find the truth. I believe that. I believe in our government's ability to charge you with a crime. And they will find him guilty on this. This is not a good look for gun advocate groups. This is not good for people who believe in pro-Second Amendment stance on defend your life and self-defense. This is not a good look for the gun lobby right now.
No, this reminds me of 2 other specific cases. Earlier this year, I believe his name is Ahmaud Arbery, and back to George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, where you have these private citizens acting as vigilantes, and unfortunately they end up putting themselves in bad situations where maybe they are acting in self-defense per se, but they didn't have to put themselves in the situation to begin with. And I think he just ultimately, whether or not it was self-defense, which I do believe 100% he acted in self-defense, whether or not that's true, he put himself in that situation where that needed to be necessary, and I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah, it's literally like he was being the Punisher, and then, he kills people like, hey, I was just defending myself. It's like, well, you, like, not saying he instigated it, but you showed up with a rifle for a reason. Now, once again, this was not his community. And if he was paid, that's another thing in itself.
Yeah, and I think that I'm guessing if that's true, that's probably an issue too, because I don't know if you're allowed to. I mean, again, I don't know the law or anything, but it's a tough situation because the police are being told to stand down and not do anything. So this puts private individuals in a tough spot too. So it's a weird fine line that it's what are you supposed to do?
And it's a problem with the narrative that has been painted around these protests and riots, because they're devolving and we're losing the rule of law in front of us. People don't know what to do with their own business. When this first started going on with George Floyd, there's people showing up just blasting shotgun rounds in the air to scatter people and everything. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's dialed up between the pandemic, unemployment, the election, COVID, and now riots and race wars and full-scale media propaganda. This isn't good, dude. This is not. And then we have a young man taking things into his own hands, and it's sad that people were shot and killed. Now, it's being said that those people that he shot and killed were felons. We'll see. We'll see if all that comes out. One guy had a gun, apparently. We'll see. We'll know. We'll know if he had a gun. We'll see. But I don't think this kid is going to get off. I believe they will jail him, and he'll be a felon, and they may charge him with murder. This is not a good look for anybody who's pro-gun right now.
No.
And once again, I'll say it for the last time. The self-defense is a separate issue. This has nothing to do with self-defense. You can argue the self-defense and your right to defend yourself it's literally like the bottom 10th of this argument. This is really about what his intent was when he went there.
And again, that's what this court case is going to boil down to. Guaranteed. Yeah,
it's a sad state of affairs, man. It really is. I hope America. I know America has survived worse, but I hope we get through this. I hope that this doesn't alienate people. I hope this should make for easier discussions, as far as us being able to each have our points of view and maybe learn something from each other and listen. And instead of extending with emotion, listen with an open mind. Get the other side. But we're in these echo chambers with these social media pages, man. This is not good. It's not good for humanity. It's not good for politics. This is not healthy. It's really not. It's sad. It's really sad that people are dying because there's negligence on many different people's part. You can say it's the mayor, you can say it's politicians, you can say it's the media, you can say it's the individuals. But needless to say, people are fucking dying in our streets.
Yeah. And you know what it is, too? It really is, it's all of it. It's all of it. It's a massive powder keg that's it's growing and it's getting worse. And
I wonder if this is what it was like during the Civil War. Just at a slower, maybe more intense, but less, more intense and more regional. Like, like maybe something broke out and then it took a month to get to the next state, or so maybe it was a little different. But I really wonder, man.
Yeah, and you got to think. I mean, it's a just dangerous combination of things that's happening. You have media pushing narratives that are false and knownly false, and it's causing politicians to act in a certain way to try and save face or whatever reason. And then they have police standing down because, God forbid, we have police brutality going on, and we don't want to seem like we're interfering in these mostly peaceful protests. And then the protests
fiery.
That's right. And then the peaceful protests get not so peaceful, and all the private businesses now they need to protect their own property, so they're out here either acting on their own or hiring these vigilantes to come on out. And it just breaks it down and gets worse and worse and worse the farther down the line you go, when really you almost think you'd be better off just, I don't know, having the police interfere at the top.
Yeah, and back to the vigilante thing. If that guy was hired, I wonder if they'll go after the business owner.
I don't know.
They probably could. People died.
It's a all the way around. It's just a terrible situation. It's not good for anyone.
We'll get through it. I know we will. It's just on the other side of this, people really need to start talking to people that don't share their same views and values and come together as people instead of thinking it's scoring political points or I won and you lost and I'm right and you're wrong. And we're the great experiment and we're done experimenting, it seems. United States self-government is the great experiment. It seems like the people don't want to experiment with each other, with different political parties, with different points of view. I don't want to fundamentally change America. We don't need that. What we need to do is come together, find compromises in what each other wants, and maybe push that type of legislation. And you would think a guy like Trump, he's not a conservative. No. Donald Trump is not a conservative.
Not at all.
He is a moderate populist Republican. If anybody, honestly, this is like a Bill Clinton-esque Republican. Bill Clinton was the same way. He was like a moderate Democrat. He just leaned a little left. Trump leans just a little right. That's all this is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been either he's pushing points for his party and to score points or to try to win votes, whatever it is. You would think a guy that really is a blend of the two parties, you would think compromises could happen under this presidency, and we've seen what that has gotten us. It's not, and we could talk about, how one side wants to fundamentally change America and the other wants to keep it one way or another. We could have that discussion, but we're not talking to each other why we think it needs to change to such extremes to the progressive dream. And then the progressives aren't talking to conservatives about why we should hold on to our values and our roots and where we come from. We're not having those discussions, and it's leading to literal bloodshed in American streets, in American cities. And then instead of having leadership, we just pass the buck. The people blame the police blame the politician blame the president blames the media, and then we're at the very bottom of that, arguing over who's got the bigger pile of crap. And honestly, in all of the optics, we could talk, whether this country's systemically racist or not, but I hope people understand where the black community is coming from. I really do. Yeah. I mean, if this is how they feel, maybe you should listen. Maybe you should listen to these people, even if they are a little wrong. I bet you they're right. I bet you there's some truth to what they're saying. They're not just making this up. Black people couldn't vote till the 60s. It didn't just change overnight.
Well,
there's many layers to that, dissecting this notion that, oh, well, you're equal, you're free, you're not slaves. It's not the same thing, man. It's not.
Yeah. So
And to
to
say
that
it is foolish.
to that point, if they were always on the same level as everybody else, and then just out of nowhere they started screaming about systemic racism over police brutality when the data and the analytics don't back it up, then maybe I'd understand. But to your point, they've had to endure all this hardship, and fairly recently again, it's not like it was forever ago. It was very recently that they've gotten the same rights as everybody else.
My father was born in 1963. Black people got to vote in 1964. Exactly, David. That's how I wrap my mind around this, that in my father's lifetime, black people were able to vote. My dad's not even 60 years old.
Yeah. It was not that long ago.
It's not. Within a lifetime.
No.
Slavery was only like 2 people ago.
Yeah.
Like 2 generations, slaves still.
So that kind of leads you down the road where there's 2 ways to look at it, but you can't really blame them for looking at it at it one of the 2 ways. Now you could look at it the other way, that we were one of the first Western civilizations to end slavery. We did ultimately make things right, and they do have equal civil rights. You could look at the positives, but at the end of the day, they're not necessarily wrong for looking at it. Maybe the negatives. Either way, it's truth. It's just their perception of it, and it's not.
And they live with it, and we didn't. We didn't, and that can even go with men. Women just celebrated their 100 years of suffrage to vote. That's 1 person ago. People live to 100 all the time, and men get up there. I'm not one believing in the men and women, wage gap and stuff. I'm sure there's truth to some of that data. There's other factors as well, but women 1 people ago couldn't vote. Tell me again about your problems as a white male in America, where you could own land as long as you were owning, as long as you could own land, you could vote.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But this is the great experiment we are part of, and this is what makes this country great, is that we've gone through these things. We've gone through civil rights for women and minorities. But yeah, I agree. There's plenty of things that need to be done, and just to touch back on the tying the black suffrage to Black Lives Matter and to police brutality. Yeah, they've been brutalized by the police. They have been. It's not a myth. It's not a myth. But once again, this is why we need to look at the individual cases. And then we can, from there, say, okay, this was not saying the cops are going out being racist, because that's the narrative painted by a media, which is the lie. But there's truth to that. Black people are targeted more. They're frisked more. They're stopped by police more. Not saying that's racist intentions. Not saying the cop is racist. But that is the statistical analytics. Black people commit more violent crime. Black people, they make up larger portions of the prison population. They do. Yes, they do. They definitely do. But you know what? Probably some of that is profiling. Probably some of that is higher police presence in lower income areas, which are mostly ran by minorities. There is a system to both sides of this argument that America is systemically racist, which I don't initially believe, but I have not experienced racism at a level that a minority has, especially a black man or a black woman. But there's truth to their argument. And all we can do is listen. And I kind of want to segue this into, how do you feel about the National Basketball League, National Hockey League, and the National Baseball League, and postponing their games and stuff? And football is going to do it as well. The Buffalo Bills just announced that they are going to have dialogue at their games as well about this time right now. How do you feel about it, Dave? Being you're a much bigger sports fan than I am. How do you feel about it? Do you think let me ask you this. Do you think it is the right way to do it? Do you think they should do it? Do you agree with it? Do you think it will bring change? Do you think it helps?
So I might possibly be able to debate myself on this topic, because I kind of feel 2 ways about it.
It's a very powerful thing to do, man. It's a very powerful thing to do.
Let's go back to Colin Kaepernick. however many years ago he started the kneeling issue. My biggest issue with Colin Kaepernick is that he himself made a terrible case for himself. And what I mean by that is, back when he started kneeling during the national anthem, his original sentiment was not that he's just trying to draw attention to an issue. His original sentiment was very hateful in a way, if you don't mind me saying. And it was very anti-police. It was very anti-America. And then, I guess when he quickly changed his own narrative when he experienced that people were kind of revolting against the idea that he would disrespect the flag and things like that. So he just changed what he was saying after he's already done it and already made statements about why he was doing it. So my biggest problem back then was the fact that he said he was doing it to disrespect the flag, disrespect the country, disrespect the anthem, and then changed and said that he was only trying to draw attention to an issue. And back when it was happening, if we put context to it, he was one of the more popular athletes in the National Football League. He was a pretty big player, pretty big name. I'm sure he had plenty of social media following. He could have easily made a case at any other time than the national anthem, and that's why I always said that he was doing it specifically to be disrespectful to the flag, because he could have literally picked any other time. He could have picked during interviews. He could have gone on his own social media. He had millions of followers. He could have easily drawn attention to his topic and to what he was talking about, police brutality and systemic racism and racial injustice and whatever else. He could have done it in so many other ways, but he specifically did it during the national anthem because he wanted to be disrespectful to the national anthem, to the flag, to the country. And that's my biggest issue I had with him when that was happening. It's not that I was against the idea of bringing in attention to racial injustice. Obviously, I'm all for that. I think flash forward to now, the narrative is very different, and I think I truthfully believe that they actually want to only bring attention to racial injustice. And in that case, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'd rather they do something like this than what Colin Kaepernick was doing, because I think what Colin Kaepernick was doing was not only disrespectful, but I think it was the worst thing he could have done, because it just brought more hate to what he was trying to draw attention to. So I think what they're doing now is a lot better off than what Colin Kaepernick was doing 5 years ago, or however long ago it was now.
Well, it was within the Trump presidency. I believe it started in 2016.
Was it 2016? Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah. So again, I just, at the end of the day, I like this more than what was happening in 2016, what Colin Kaepernick was doing. I just think he did a terrible job rolling out what he was trying to do. I always said if you want to just simply bring attention to the topic, again, these athletes are followed and watched by millions and millions of people. Just say something. There is no reason they specifically had to do something during a national anthem. To me, that's blatant. That's why I always said it was disrespectful, because there were so many other ways they could have done it. The reason they picked that was specifically to be disrespectful.
I always told people about Kaepernick in particular that, we have the greatest country because you can protest our country.
Sure.
You can pretty much say anything without, as long as it's not a direct threat to the president or a politician. You can burn the flag, you can burn the Bible, do all that.
Mm-hmm.
People that go and fight in wars, even though the military in particular, large segments of it, don't think it's the right thing and they do consider it disrespectful. I understand that point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go and fight a war and say it's for American freedom, well, one of the freedoms is to burn the flag and protest your country.
Yeah.
So
I never argued against his right to do what he was doing. I just always felt like it was a poor way to roll out what he was trying to do.
For sure.
Because it did nothing but divide people.
For sure, exactly. That was one of my beefs with the rapper Eminem. At one of the BET Awards, he dropped a a freestyle song, like a cypher type hip hop rap, and he explicitly used music to divide people. I was a huge Eminem fan for many years, and I told myself I am no longer being influenced by him because he expressively said, "You're either with me or you're against me." And in my mind, I believe that music is supposed to unite people, not divide them. And then when you use that tactic maliciously for whatever purpose, it's not right. It's not right.
No.
So yeah, but I never saw anything wrong with Kaepernick doing, and all I saw was a guy who was standing up for what he thought was right, and I thought that was very commendable, even if I did disagree with it to some level. On as far as, once again, I love this country. Everything else. I see the military side. I see the disrespect to the flag and all that. I understand that, and I agree with you. I don't understand. Once again, in the social media sphere. When I scroll through my page, my Facebook in particular, my personal one, I don't know about you, Dave, but I have it's one or the other. It's like I can tell you're a Democrat, tell you're a Republican. And it's like, when I scroll through, I see both, bam, 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 on the same issues sometimes, days apart. These posts will be days apart. I did it last night for about an hour. I just kept scrolling because I check it about once a week. So when I do, I normally scroll for a good while. And we're so divided, and we've willingly done it to ourselves. There's no reason why we can't come together when we have more information now, access, than we ever have in human history.
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, we can be mad at the sports. We can be mad at Kaepernick. We can be mad at Eminem. We can be mad at politicians. What I really think that hatred is really a hatred that you have for yourself, that, like, I don't mean like you, obviously, but I mean like the average person's hatred they have for themselves, that they haven't explored other points of view. They haven't explored thinking things on the other side of the coin, or maybe putting themselves in someone else's shoes for a little while.
Yeah.
Once again, I don't want to disagree. I have my ideologies. I have my biases. I have what I believe, but that will never discount someone else's opinion, someone else's point of view, someone else's, unless it's a lie and goes against the truth. That's a different discussion too. But we're not having those discussions. All we're having is these emotionally charged reactions to social events. And yeah, I think it was it honestly, isn't it so America? Isn't that such an American thing to do, that before sports you talk about problems you're facing as a country? Isn't that like a hyper American thing?
Yeah.
Like if we were in a world war right now, I guarantee you all of them teams would be doing that for buying growing victory gardens, or buying war bonds, or stamps for the war, or turn in your tin and scrap and your loose paper. They'd be all doing that for war. So why is this any different?
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing it in this lens of black and white. We're seeing this in this lens of, I think the big problem was that sports were such a distraction for so long. Professional sports is nothing more than the modern Coliseum for the average person. And I've said it for years. That's one of the reasons why I follow my local sports and stuff, but I am not heavily ingrained in the sports culture. I can't tell you what college the quarterback went to. I can't tell you his best year stats, or his running averages, or his touchdown percentages. I can't tell you any of that. I can tell you the names. I can tell you what I thought of the game. I've gone to games. I enjoy them. I love the football culture. I love the hockey culture. I love it. It's great. It's awesome. But politics is my number one.
Mm-hmm.
I've never let sports precede that. And sports have been such a distraction for so long. It's kind of one of those things. What are the two things you're always told to never talk about? Politics and religion. And what are we having troubles talking about right now? Politics and religion.
Yeah, and you've practiced for so long talking about specifically those two things, especially in public.
I do not shy away from. I've been thrown out of bars. I haven't been fired from my job, but I have faced high levels of criticism and ridicule and praise. I've gotten it all at employment. I'm not shy of it. We can't. If I have to, I always looked at it. If I get fired from my point of view, whatever, I can get another job. But it's more than that, man. Like, I speak some things that people share my opinions. Yes, I also speak I'm a lightning rod for people who speak against me, and I'll speak with that person. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of. I've been that guy. I've been the one to speak out. I've been the one to have criticism and harshness, and like I said, I've been thrown out of public places. And
I have a specific story I would like to recall. Back from when we worked together, we went out to Moe's. I don't know is Moe's a national chain thing, or is that like somewhat local?
it's pretty national. I don't know if it's all 50 states, but yeah, there's a plethora of Moe's in America.
Sure. So for people who don't know what Moe's is, it's kind of like I don't know, it's
Subway
sort of like,
taco shop.
yeah, it's sort of like Chipotle-ish. In my opinion, Moe's is better than Chipotle by like a mile and a half. There's probably a lot of people who disagree with that, but that's fine. But anyway, we're in line at Moe's on lunch break at work. And there's a guy in front of us. I don't remember exactly how it even happened. Were we talking and he chimed in, or was he saying something and then you chimed in?
Yeah, well, they always ask you questions like, what do you want? Do you want it on wheat? Do you want steak? Do you want this? And I was like, yeah, do you want my driver's license information, my blood type and all that? And the guy behind the counter laughed. This was a guy that the worker knew me, not by name, but I've been there enough locally that they know me.
Sure.
And I made a joke about getting stopped on the way home and being forced to blow a breathalyzer and stuff. And you can pick up from there. I like your side.
Yeah, so basically after that situation, after that exchange of words, the guy in front of us just went into this rant about basically how a good thing that they have roadside checks because it's saving lives. And I don't even want to get into the statistics of that. I'm not even saying that's necessarily right or wrong. But Ryan does not look at things in certain ways. He looks at it as that's a clear violation of my rights as an individual. And basically they got into it in the line at Moe's. And I'm amazed that nobody got thrown out.
Yeah, and the workers just kind of like... You know, like I've had it happen at a bar. I went to a bar and it was actually right up the street from my house, and they had MAGA signs inside. And I was like, Trump, you know, like I'm not even the biggest diehard Trump, but I was doing it just like because it was there. I was like, yeah, Trump, you know, and people are like, yeah, dude. Like people were, once again, I'm a lightning rod for people that agree with me and people that disagree with me. And I love being it. But it's a burden. There's a burden there. And a woman going off on me about Bernie Sanders, man. And eventually she's like, I told the bartender, you have to leave. I was like, don't worry about it. I was leaving anyways. And my friends had to drag me out of there, not because I was being violent, but because I was just laying into this chick.
So that's funny.
You know?
And me and you have been out enough where, like, I'll talk politics with people I know because I know that, you know, they like talking that, and that's fine. Usually when I'm out, that's like, I kind of stay away from those two topics also, like politics and religion. And you take the 100% opposite approach.
Yeah, be like, hey, what's on the board there? Politics, religion? I'm all for it, man. These are the things we need to do. We probably haven't been doing this since the end of the Second War. You know?
Do you think that's true? Do you think there was a time when politics and religion were the most talked about things?
Yeah, during World Wars. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People weren't trying to stay away from it like they do now.
Well, I think the religion thing is kind of I think in the post-modern age of world wars, the religion thing kind of got tacked onto it. But yeah, I think that's only a modern phenomenon.
Yeah.
You know, at least the last 30 years.
I tend to not talk about religion ever just because I'm not super religious. Like I don't religion.
Even. I'm not. Religion is not my A1 day one.
Yeah, I don't even talk about religion like on our page, just because I don't know. It's just a topic. I guess I tend to stay away from things I don't know very well, and I don't know. I never was super religious, and I don't foresee myself becoming very religious. But I've always, of course, stood by people's right to their religion. You know, their right to choose the religion of their liking and to follow it and do all the things that they need to do. I'm always for that. I just I might not go to the same whatever as you. I might not go to church like you do, or whatever the case may be. But always fight for your right to be religious, to have religious opinions, and to follow your religion. That's fine. I'm just probably not going to go to church with you.
Yeah, and once again, I understand why people say it. The average person does not like confrontation. because most people get violent when faced with confrontation. I do not. I'm highly confrontational, but I am not violent. I will defend myself, but I don't look for a fight. I don't try to fight. I speak my mind, and whatever happens from the end of it happens, you know? And I understand when you mix alcohol and religion and politics, I get it. But there's a reason where cities are burning and people are getting shot in the streets, and it's because we're not talking about politics and religion. You know, and, you know, there's other factors. We touched on them, the media and politicians, and yeah, that's why we are the way we are here as a country. That's why it seems like there's just pockets of this ideology that, you know, are either all over your community or all over America. You know, when you look at the electoral map from 2016, Hillary Clinton won literally every city in America. You know, it's like these pockets, you know. The state should be more purple. Like isn't that the goal? Like, wouldn't the goal be that every state is a swing state? You know, like showing that there's a diverse group of ideologies and thoughts and processes and what we think should do. And like, you would think that would happen, and you think that things would get done better. I think things would get done better if there was more purple states, because then there could be compromise. It wouldn't be this hyper partisan thing, and things get gridlocked because one side wants this specific thing and the other side's not budging. Or now,
Yes.
once again, we all have our ideologies, you know, things that we won't budge on, you know. But even there, I'm not saying we have to sell out our liberties or we have to sell out, you know, our beliefs. But if you can't get legislation passed because it goes against your beliefs, well, maybe you need to have those conversations of politics and religion, and maybe not change people's minds, but get them to compromise or understand or walk the mile in each other's shoes.
Yeah.
You know, we need that more now than ever, man. And it's the only way we're going to heal. And you would think that would be the way it is, considering we're all going through literally the same COVID epidemic and hyper unemployment. We're all in this together.
Yeah. So
you can't rock the boat too much.
Yeah. So perfect segue to every time you say you got COVID news, I get super excited and I say COVID news. But I did see something today, and the first thing I thought was, that can't be right. I better go check. So sure enough, I went to CDC's website, and it's 100% true. So apparently, in case you didn't hear this, because I'm sure they're trying to sweep this under the rug big time, 6% of all the deaths with COVID, only 6% of those deaths, that was COVID the only underlying medical condition. So out of the 170,000 or whatever we're up to now, only 6% of those, COVID was the only underlying medical condition. 6%. So that takes that already minute, super minute number, and it shrinks it that much more. So I guess that begs the question, and something I've been asking for a long time: how deadly is COVID? Obviously, it is deadly. I'm not saying it's not deadly, and it's obviously bad for people who have already, weak immune systems from other diseases. But is there any reason that a young, healthy person can't go out into the public without fearing for his life over COVID?
I can add one more statistic to that. Trump spoke about it in his speech at the RNC, which we'll cover here in a few moments. But Trump talked about how we have we have lower rates of death. And
because if you actually look at a per capita statistic, we're not off the charts like people think. Because what the media is trying to do is take a country of 330 million people and compare it to a country of 3 million people and say, wow, look at all this deaths this 330 million population country has. Well, no shit. We have 100 times the people. No kidding.
I was reading a NPR article that was actually breaking down Trump's points about how we've done more testing. All those points that Trump's been beating his chest about. And the one number I found that was to me, it was the Excalibur, was that our case number to death rate is like the 24th out of all of these other countries. It's 3.3%.
So out of
meaning,
people who, yeah,
out of the 170,000 cases, only 3.3% per 10,000 die from COVID, which is one, not the lowest, but super low compared to any other country. England,
yeah,
Italy are 1 and 2.
yeah, and I think
And you can talk about the age of population. You can talk, you can talk all that. You can talk about how we have better healthcare. Sure. But the fact of the matter remains is our death rates is some of the lowest in the world. We
well, I
have
think
high case numbers, yes. We do have a lot of cases, yes. But relative to that, we have very low death numbers.
right, and I think that exclusively speaks to how good our healthcare system is, even though people want to try to pick it apart and they want to be like all these other countries that have this single payer healthcare because it's so great to have single payer healthcare, even though it takes months and months to get in for basic checkups and coverages. I think the biggest reason, without a doubt, is because we have quick, effective healthcare. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the best it could be. I'm saying it's enormously better than most, if not all, single payer care systems, and that's why when people have COVID here, it's not an immediate death sentence.
And we also have something that is super important, which is experimentation data. We've tried things, we've failed things, we've done things good, we've done things bad, we've done this. So this is trial. This is trial and reward. This is risk and reward. This is need more data to figure it out for sure. This is all those things at once. And I've said it now, I'll say it another 100 times. We won't know anything truly concrete about COVID till next winter, probably.
Yeah. And some things we may never know about COVID, such as how
If
terrible...
it came from a lab?
Maybe. Conspiracy cast. We might not know how terrible it was to put people in nursing homes, because recently I saw a headline that Andrew Cuomo rejects the idea of a third-party investigation of the deaths caused by putting COVID patients in nursing homes because, quote, it would be political. So
Because not
apparently...
investigating it isn't political.
No, he only specifically doesn't want it investigated because it would be political. And now, I know Andrew Cuomo is your favorite person, at least in New York, probably in the whole country. What do you feel? What do you feel about that?
I know that I know he gave himself dictatorial power, and I also know that when this all first went down, he basically told the nursing homes, when he sent these people there, whatever happens, you're not going to be able to get sued. Cuomo covered his ass. He knows exactly what he's doing. And for a guy who says it would be political, he's playing politics pretty well right now. Politics 101. There's a book. It was written by a guy named Nicholas Machiavelli during the Italian Renaissance called The Prince.
Is that different? Is that a different Machiavelli than Tupac?
Yes. Tupac's Machiavelli alias was it was just that, it was an alias, but he was well researched. The basic premise behind Machiavelli is that you stand in the light, but you work in the shadows, right? Like you'll do backdoor deals while simultaneously saying you love the people. You'll be in the back, undermining them. The Prince, it's a pretty quick read, but it's a huge book in any position of power. Pretty much every president ever has read it, and that's what he's doing. He's playing textbook Machiavelli principles right now. And I hate the guy, but you can't hate him. He's good at what he does. He's a good liar. He's a good politician. So
that's one more beep for the records. That's kind of the most backhanded compliment you could ever give somebody, isn't it? That they're a good politician.
Yeah, I used to get upset by it, but now it's just like, once again, we have ourselves to blame for these people. They don't just win elections for no reason. We allow them to manipulate us, to sway us. We allow media to manipulate us and sway us. We allow this stuff to happen. And that's what I'll touch back on my earlier point, that this hatred we have for each other, this misunderstanding is misplaced, because it's stuff you're projecting that you feel about yourself. You're projecting on these other people, this party of government, the Democrats, the Republicans, the this, the blacks, the whites. You're projecting that on them instead of you internalizing it and realizing what it really is all about. And it goes all the way up the ladder, man. Yeah, I hate him, but I honestly, he's played the political handbook like a pro.
Yeah.
And I won't say I respect him for it, but I'm sure people respect him for it.
Well, I know I couldn't do it. That's why I do this. So while you were gone, I figured I'd sneak off for a couple headline reads on the old Facebook. And surely
my favorite.
Our admin number 5, Jeremy J. I shouldn't say his whole name. Let's call him J. Let's call him J Dog.
J-Dog.
I'm reading his his post right now, and it says, I quote, "I'd highly advise against getting any dog shit Lenovo laptops." And that'd be a great time to plug that this podcast is filmed on a dog shit Lenovo laptop.
Why? Is it because it's ran by China?
China. Wrong. Maybe correct. I don't know. Tremendous. It's a tremendous laptop.
Have I spoken publicly on our podcast about how I think Trump should stop calling it the China virus?
I don't know if you have. You've said it several times to me before and in our chat.
I think he needs to stop it.
Do you think it's just hurting his cause?
It does him nothing. It promotes. There is 0 positives from it. 0. You are purposely dividing people on a label. We hate the left. We hate the Democrats because of identity politics. Well, what is Trump doing when he labels it the China virus?
China.
It's a form of identity politics. It's grouping people into camps. And you know what? It makes you easier to manipulate and control.
It's probably dangerous.
It does him nothing.
If we could go back to, was it FDR? I'm trying to think. It was some Democratic president who locked up all the Japanese people during Pearl Harbor. Who was that? Was that FDR?
FDR.
Who locked up all the Japs? I'm trying to remember.
FDR.
FDR locked up all the Japs. Can we just keep saying this? I'd like to point out that the actual concentration camps, even though they talk about Mexico and all that, the actual concentration camps, whereas during World War II, was FDR locking up Japanese people. That was kind of off topic, but I would just like to point out that FDR locked up Japanese people.
Door to door.
Literally kept them in cages. I want to talk about identity politics. Get bombed by a couple Japanese pilots. All of a sudden, American citizens are getting locked up for being Japanese. Nice.
Yeah, and honestly, there's, I've heard it put by in other media outlets, independent media outlets, that every time he references the China thing, Chinese people are getting attacked because it's brewing, it's uprooting this racism. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying Trump is promoting racism. I'm not saying he's doing it on purpose. He's doing it because it's gonna make a headline. It's gonna make the media talk about it. It's gonna make controversy. There's no such thing as bad publicity. All that, yeah, sure, but it does him no favors. It does him nothing. And it's not an exorbitant amount of energy, but he's putting energy in it. He's entertaining it.
When this COVID thing first kind of started happening, I remember there was a large amount of people who wouldn't go get Chinese food. And
or Corona beer.
Sure. That's just hilarious.
It's a shitty beer anyways.
I think all beer is shitty beer. Have we talked about this? I'm not much of a drinker to begin with, but when I drink, it's not beer, ever.
You're a Scotch guy?
Yeah, whiskey, Scotch, something. I don't know. Give me something that's not beer.
Something.
I don't even honestly, yes. Yeah, sure. That's right.
I respect that. Another quick off-the-rail segue. My favorite band of all time is Slipknot. They have their own whiskey, and I got to pick me up a bottle. I'm going to start drinking that shit straight like a man.
Slipknot whiskey.
Yep, and it's actually rated quite highly in the community. Yep, it's got very good reviews.
Hey, you guys want to watch Ryan get fired up real quick? Stone Sour is better than Slipknot.
We're done. Episode 7 is it, dude. We're done here. Mostly peaceful podcast.
Ryan has officially quit the podcast. I don't actually believe that.
I'm your host and producer, Dave Korn. I'm going to talk to myself.
I think Stone Sour has a couple of good songs. I'll leave it at that.
I do too. I love Stone Sour, but they are dwarfed extensively by Slipknot.
How many times have you seen Slipknot live? Many.
7. 7. I would have seen.
I don't think I've been to 7 concerts total.
I would have seen them lucky number 8 in the pit, front row. Got the whole. I bought like an extra exclusive. They called it one of their song title names, like the experience. I would have had like early access to the venue. I could have toured their museum and basically everything but backstage passes. But goddamn coronavirus.
I've heard the pit at Slipknot concerts. I heard they're mostly peaceful.
Heavily peaceful.
Mostly. Off the rails. We always fit it into one of the episodes. I like going off the rails. We've talked about that. If I could specifically only go off the rails, I would do it.
Sounds like the anti of Dare, right? Dare. Don't do drugs. This is welcome to Off the Rails.
I like off the rails. I think we have a good balance. We'll go off the rails once in a while, but let's keep it. We're mostly on topic.
I had post office news. If I want to touch briefly on that, and then we can get to the real elephant in the room.
That's bad. That joke's so bad. I'm going to cut it out of the podcast.
Post office.
Were they dissolved?
Unfortunately, no.
Damn it.
He's trying to have Americans lose their jobs. All right, so segue.
There's no segue from that.
Maybe the post office should use segues. The Postmaster General went up in front of a joint session of Congress to discuss everything going on with the post office. I'm not going to beat this to a dead horse. I did think it was important to note the post office is done. They're not removing blue mailboxes anymore, and they are not doing the sorting machines. They're going to wait until after the election. He also said that the post office would be able to do mail-in voting for the entire country. Not saying they're going to, but he also said if you are going to vote by mail, that you need to request your ballot and vote early so we can flatten the curve on the post office.
No, we talked about this in I believe it was the last podcast or the one before that. That was one of the things I was most nervous about, because when people move or die and you just send mail to that address, it's not necessarily going to the right person. So the way to prevent that, like when they do with early mail-in voting, which we've done for a long time now, is you just send a request form in, because then they have your current address and they know it's you. That makes me feel more comfortable. There's still other obstacles, but that helps me get there about feeling better about it. I still don't support it 100%, but that's the way to do. If you're going to do it, you have to do it that way.
And this gentleman in particular, I did not get his name or anything. I didn't do an extensive dive on this because I didn't want to waste a lot of brain power on it. But it is important to know that this was the guy that we also reported here on the December podcast, that he was one of the replacements that they had at the post office. So he is new. Pretty sure he's new since the pandemic even. Mm-hmm. And this guy is going through these steps, reassuring the American people that there's going to be no slowdown in the mail. None of that, because there was issues on overtime and late deliveries and all this. And he said he's working very hard to clean all that clutter up. There's going to be no problem with any votes cast by mail. And he wanted to reassure the American people that they're not removing anything. So there's no... he basically was removing the political talking points that were getting passed around the media. And bravo to him. I appreciate it. And yes, it makes me feel better as well that there is some transparency going on in this government.
Yeah. What'd be an interesting way to kind of help with some mail-in voting issues? Police have to wear body cams in some part for investigative reasons if anything were to happen in an incident. But in a way, that kind of helps keep people accountable. And I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't mind seeing some kind of body cam or some kind of cam on the mail people.
Yeah, put on the truck.
Yeah,
put on the truck
to help keep them accountable too, to make sure there is nothing going on, and if there is, we could investigate it.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I mean, I think at some point, I trust my mail person. Like they may deliver it to the wrong mailbox in my apartment building, but I don't think he's stealing from me. And honestly, if there's ever a part to stand with your integrity and promote your integrity and gain integrity, it would be delivering ballots to people, even though people there's things getting passed around social media. The mailman stole my Trump sign or whatever, which maybe has happened. I don't believe so, because I believe anybody that works in the public sector, when they put that uniform on, other than politicians for the most part, they're there to do their job for their community.
Yeah.
So you want to get to the elephant in the room?
I'm still cutting that out. I think it's time. I think that was, I don't know, was that the biggest news? It's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe. I guess in any year it normally would be.
Yes, I put, honestly, out of anything I put into this week for show prep, this was the thing that took, I'll say it took 60% of my time out of all the prep I did. And then everything else has been what we touched base on today.
Sure.
But yeah, the RNC, how much of it did you actually catch percentage-wise, would you say?
Live or in general?
Just in general, clips, whatever. What do you think you actually watched of the 3-day event?
I'm going to guess it was rather low. Put your percentage out there first.
Mine was over 50.
Over 50.
Yes.
I'm not even close.
Yeah, I streamed most of it. I've seen clips. The only thing I didn't do that I wish I would have listened to before this recording was the Rand Paul speech, because I thought it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But I heard he gave a phenomenal speech. But yeah, I caught about, I'll say less than 60%, but I definitely caught over half of the convention in full.
I would say, to answer your question, I was probably 10 to 15%.
Okay.
It's pretty low.
On the first day of the RNC, Trump basically took he took the nomination already.
He spoke. I remember this was a big thing, but he was going to speak at every night of the convention.
Yeah, which he did not. He only spoke at, I don't even think he spoke at the night of the RNC. He spoke during the day that the RNC was going on, and he closed out the convention on day 3.
Gotcha.
Both were pretty good speeches. But yeah, he talked about Obamagate. He talked about our economy, the unemployment. The markets are at an all-time high, which necessarily doesn't correlate to anything to the average person, except for 401k along those measures. I don't know how you feel about Wall Street, but they're probably less trustworthy than politicians at this point, some ways. He talked about how there's been 9 million jobs created in 3 months, which is in a high for the government numbers, as far as the numbers. He was talking about the farmers bill and the tax on China and how he was helping the farmers. Basically, it was just all his accomplishments, which is...
sure, that's what you want it to be if you're an incumbent.
Yes, and he stressed that the governors weren't ready for the coronavirus. They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. They didn't have PPE. They didn't have medical supplies. They didn't have information to do their jobs when it came to COVID, which is true. But my biggest takeaway from his day, manufacturing numbers are up, which is always a good sign. We're making stuff here. My biggest thing that he said, though, on the first day of this convention, success brings unity. Something we talked about on this podcast here is that if Trump's got any shot, if he's got hearts and minds and anything like that, he needs to talk policy, and he needs to talk about what policies he's implemented has directly helped the people and helped gravitate people to him and his campaign. And success brings unity. I could not have said it better. It does. Rising waters raise all ships, basically.
Yeah. He kind of did exactly what we said he should have done. We just being the direct contrast of the Democratic National Convention. They were all pre-recorded and they weren't live, and it was literally not about policy at all. It was just about being the bigger people or whatever nonsense they were trying to push. And we said that I said personally that I wanted to see it live. I wanted the people in the audience. I wanted all of that. And you said you wanted to see policy. And it seems like we got kind of what we're looking for.
We got all three checks, yeah. And that's actually what I was just about to say. Their intro was super pro-America. Super pro-America, which I always love. They opened with a prayer, which I, once again, we're not the most religious people. I find it, I'll say corny. I don't mean that disrespectfully. But it does show gratefulness, which is what I appreciate about prayers in general. My family, we do a prayer before eating on Thanksgiving at one of our events and stuff. We're not all hyper-religious, but once again, breaking bread and showing gratitude is very important in these times. The White House was a beautiful backdrop.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember the other venue they were going to do it, but they were going to do it in a different state. I think, honestly, any party that is in power should do it at the White House because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's no reason why they can't. I mean, this is the people's house. This is our house, and it's always awesome to see DC, in particular, the White House, painted with different backdrops and a different feel to it. And they do so much there already. Utilize that space. It's beautiful. I love the White House. I've been there 2 times. I've seen it twice. Beautiful. And Trump definitely showed how good he is at the reality TV-esque. The production value was incredible. Very high quality in comparison to the DNC, which necessarily doesn't translate to anything. I'm just speaking on what I've seen, what I saw. But yeah, you definitely could tell that there was a lot of conscious effort on the frame, the angles, the filmography, the overall just direction of it. It had a pace to it, kind of like a play, kind of like something like that, a movie. It scripted very well. Very good job by the Republican National Convention. Turning Point USA was there, and they spoke about young people in republicanism and young parents in particular, which is important because normally you assume that young people lean left. Glad to see there's young people there. Turning Point USA is a pretty good institution from my understanding. They put out rather good content, so it was good to see them there. I believe Turning Point UFC touched on rigging the system and called out social media. And they were talking about how they censor people mostly on the right. This has been something documented and covered in other media, so I won't beat that with a dead horse. And they also had a teacher on that talked about the teachers' unions and how the teachers' unions constricted some of the practices of the teachers and how basically that the unions, how they chain teachers down. I have teachers in my family, and I won't get into it on this podcast, but I do have maybe when there's less election news, we can talk about the public education sector because it's very interesting, and I would actually interview my family members and get more, on the field reporting, I'll say.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first day it was good. Like I said, the only thing I did not catch on day one was the Rand Paul speech, which I really hoped. On the second day, they did the citizen ceremony, which was a good optic. Once again, very good reality star TV. Once again, beautiful job by the Republicans. Apparently, those people didn't know they were going to be. It was a secret. Now you can look at that 2 ways. You can look at that as that they were tools of political plight, and you can also look at it that maybe Trump really wanted to make it special. Either way, I think it was a good optic overall. It was cool to see the actual ceremony in, kind of shows that Republicans don't hate immigrants. We just want legal documentation, all that, things of that nature. It linked it to the legal side of immigration, which is important because we are a country of immigrants. Mike Pompeo, he spoke, which they weren't happy about that either. And these speakers, especially Mike Pompeo, Melania spoke, Dan Kershaw spoke. His stuff was awesome. But before I get ahead of myself, Mike Pompeo in particular talked about the foreign policy of the president and his administration, what they've done with the URE and the Middle Peace deal, the China, the toughness on China and how we can't trust this regime, North Korea, the global summit that happened in 2017 and stuff. hitting that policy note that we wanted to see here at December 1773. That was very important to us, and they delivered. Melania Trump.
Yeah,
I read a.
she's one of the 10. She's part of the 10 to 15% that I caught. Her speech was incredible.
Yeah, I read a political article. I urge everybody to do it, but they broke down a professional body language expert broke down all their speeches. He like basically watched everything without sound, and he didn't praise anybody. He talked about both Democrats and Republicans. I urge everybody to look it up, but I'll just touch on 2 points of his article. One was Melania Trump, and he talked about how you can tell that she wasn't necessarily comfortable speaking publicly, which is a big fear of a lot of people. Her speech was awesome. I thought it was heartfelt. She talked about her immigration life, her situation, how she came here when she was a young 20-something-year-old.
Yeah. For the record, her legal immigration.
Yes, she became an American citizen, I think, slightly before 30. She talked about COVID and our military first responders. They used her as the ploy to inject empathy and to show that, you know, Republicans have a heart. And when I watch her, I got the whole trying to connect with suburban housewives feel. Talked about how we can always come together and help each other, and her Be Best program and what that has done. Once again, policy, also with, you know, we don't necessarily always like emotion, but that it did feel emotional. It was a good speech. I thought it was well written. Once again, she's not the best public speaker. Most people aren't. I believe that Melania had more policy in her speech than all of the Democratic National Convention speeches.
There's truth to that.
She had a statement that I wrote down that I thought was powerful. Just like me. And that was in reference to the things happening and, you know, having to deal with a COVID and raising kids. Like I said, because suburban housewives are going to be a main demographic Trump has to win this election. That's where the swing is going to happen, is going to be in that demographic as well. Trying to connect with the listeners. Well-written speech, people. Good job. The day 2 speech as well had Dan Kershaw, and I love that guy. Honestly, I've thought to move to his area of Texas just to have that guy as my representative because I think he's awesome. But that second day, it was all about protecting our heroes, standing with our country. We're a country of heroes, high level of patriotism, highlighting heroes like Dan Kershaw. He was in the military. He's a Navy SEAL. He's got one eye. He's got the eye patch if people don't know who he is.
He's the one Saturday Night Live made fun of for having an eye patch.
Creepy porn guy, yeah.
Nothing like making fun of a person who got injured in a war.
I mean, dude, they hit the points, man. They really did. I'll just gloss over another number. Trump in his speech killed it, dude. Trump killed his speech. Talked policy. He talked numbers. He beat his chest on COVID. He beat his chest on the economy. He beat his chest on being the people's president. Say nothing, do nothing politicians. He beat his chest on that, and I think he delivered what he needed to deliver at the RNC. I've not seen the numbers of polling post RNC because of all the other things that have consumed my time with media, but I would not doubt it if Trump got a boost in polls after this. One number he referenced that I thought was very important was that the allies in NATO have pledged $100 billion. We are starting to get paid for being the police of the world, which is something Trump ran on. And you can check a promise there. He said that they need to pay their fair share, basically. And it's going to go up in the future years, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, countries have used the most powerful military in the world for no cost. I mean, it was basically a freebie.
Yeah, so good job, Trump. You hit on everything that both you and I wanted. I didn't have any real concerns. The only thing I think they should have done is they should have had everybody wear masks that sat in that lawn on night 3. He should have everybody wear masks because all it's doing is giving media cannon fodder to stuff a narrative down the throat and say Republicans don't care about COVID. They don't take it serious. They don't, and use these divisive tactics. So I think that was a little bit of a foresight. Obviously, I'm sure they left it up to the people because I did see people with masks, but by and large, nobody had masks on. So yeah, I think they did a great job. Overall, the RNC was much better than the DNC, and I don't mean that out of nothing. Kamala Harris gave a speech. I did not catch too much of it, but it was their typical talking points, and I think it was right after the Kenosha shooting, talking about racism and systematic racism, and other media outlets have broken that down, but the expected typical stuff. So we're seeing this both sides of the onion here roll down the hill, but I think the Republicans did a great job, and I'm looking forward to what the polling is going to say. Know that we can't really trust polls, but it is going to be interesting considering the gap between Trump and Biden is closer than it was for Trump and Hillary. So I don't know if the media has their polling better or it's just really more people are leaning Trump. So we'll see. We're at like 70 something days to the election. So, and then one last point on the third night of the RNC. I don't know if anybody's seen the video, but go watch it. It's on Fox News. Rand Paul got surrounded by a mob and was threatened for his life after leaving the RNC. He was there with his wife and 2 of his friends. They got a hotel in Washington, and they were threatening to beat him, and luckily police were there. And they kept telling him to say Breonna Taylor's name and threatening him. And something that's super ironic is Rand Paul, Breonna Taylor is the woman that was killed during the no-knock raid. I don't know too much about her case, but it's very high profile right now. And Rand Paul has sponsored like 15 or 17 pieces of legislation to stop that at the federal level. And they were literally
writing the law.
Yeah, Breonna Taylor law. Yeah. They were literally threatening him, saying all this thing. And he's the guy. He's that dude that you should be like going to and talking about, because Rand Paul is the guy that stands for civil liberties, unlike any other Republican. He was my RNC choice in 2016 until he dropped out. He was my that's the guy I wanted for president. You know,
he was up there for me. He was one of my top people.
And he also talked about how the FBI needs to investigate Antifa and these other organizations because he believes they are being paid to be there and get bust around the country and cause this mayhem and chaos.
Yeah, and really that's
kind of a conspiracy theory as of right now, but there's no reason why they shouldn't, considering they did threaten an elected official, a federal elected official.
If you want my opinion based on that, that's likely the reason Rand Paul was attacked by a mostly peaceful mob.
Mostly peacefully angry mob.
And I guess one last thing here. We talked about if Trump got hot, coming up from the convention, if he got a couple bumps there, and then if we went into the debates, maybe he'd get a couple bumps there. This thing could look like a runaway. Nancy Pelosi recently urged that maybe we do not do debates. I can't think of a good reason not to, unless you're a Democrat and you're scared Joe Biden is going to absolutely get demolished. Because you can do debates like we're doing right now. You could easily do this like this. It wouldn't matter at all. You'd still have the debate. It just wouldn't be in person. So you can't use.
They should give Biden Kamala and have Trump just wreck them both in the same night. That'd be great.
You can't have COVID as an excuse. We can have this conversation here. They can have a debate like this, no problem.
We can go to Walmart and go to work, and our kids can go to school. Our politicians can show up and do their job. There's no excuse at this point, especially with some of the numbers we breached on. Once again, we don't know everything about COVID. We won't for a while, but there's no excuse. All it does is look like weakness.
Yeah. So, well, you got anything else?
That was it on my agenda, my friend.
Perfect. Outro?
This is Ryan and Dave from December 1773. I appreciate everybody watching. If you like the content, subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube page. And if you like the video, share the video. Comment below, like, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you in the next one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Peace out, brother.